And tonight we're talking about the Orphic Trilogy, directed by Jean Cocteau. From the back of the box of the long out of print Criterion DVD set, decadent, subversive, and bristling with artistic invention, the myth-born cinema of Jean Cocteau disturbs as much as it charms. Cocteau was one of the most versatile of artists in pre-war Paris. Poet, novelist, playwright, painter, celebrity, and maker of cinema. His many talents converge in a bold, dreamlike films that continue to enthrall audiences around the world. In The Blood of a Poet, Orpheus, and Testament of Orpheus, Cocteau utilizes the Orphic myth to explore the complex relationships between the artist and his creations, reality, and the imagination. So this is a move. This set has always kind of been on my radar. Back when I knew of it, when it was still available, it was like really expensive for someone without a job to buy. So it was always kind of like not a priority to get. And then one day it just went out of print. You can still get Orpheus on Blu-ray by itself, and it's like it probably looks a lot better than on that DVD set. But Blood of the Poet and Testament of Orpheus, they just kind of linger wherever the hell they do, probably Studio Canal or something like that. So anyway, I didn't really ever know what to expect of these movies. I guess as far as Jean Cocteau movies, the only thing I've ever seen was Beauty and the Beast, which was discussed in episode 6. And I think we can both say that that movie is the bee's knees, really fantastic. And so, yeah, going into that, I was kind of had my expectations probably pretty high. First up, Blood of the Poet from 1932, I guess. Here's the synopsis from Letterboxd. Told in 4 episodes, an unnamed artist is transported through a mirror into another dimension where he travels through various bizarre scenarios. That about sums it up.
It does.
So, my only real note about Blood of the Poet, which is like only like 50 minutes long, is art house experimental surrealist stuff. And then I thought about that some more, and I was like, this might even be more difficult to talk about than comedy.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you take the reins.
Man.
To lead off.
Man. This might be a short episode. I checked the time on Blood of the Poet at around 6 minutes.
Neat.
Yeah.
I think mine was it was around 20.
Oh,
it was around 20 minutes that I checked it. Yeah. So this was a movie.
Yes, it certainly was. What can you say about this goddamn movie? It's like OG Inception at times.
Yeah, I wrote down Inception physics.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the thing we both thought.
Yeah. People struggling up and down hallways and corridors. Yeah, there's definitely that.
So it very much is. It's a guy who's an artist,
yes,
and he gets sucked into a weird world.
Yep.
And then he's in this dream world for a while, and then it goes to other people, and you're kind of like, I don't know why the significance of these other people are, like these kids. And then you get people playing chess, and then at the end of it, you're like, oh, that was the people all along. And I didn't really follow along with that because I was like, maybe I just stopped paying attention.
Yeah, probably.
I was gonna say I didn't think this was like bad. I didn't hate it. There was a lot of like he does for a movie that's like so old. He does a lot of cool stuff.
Oh,
but at the same time,
that's the only thing you can say about I think all 3 of these movies. Preview.
They all have cool stuff in them, like very cool techniques and interesting effects, like that Inception like stuff where people like move up walls, out of walls, on the roofs, in hallways. One thing that was really cool is that kid with all the bells chained up to her.
Yes.
And then she kind of like floats out of the scene. I thought that was pretty cool. When he falls into the mirror, it's kind of like what he did in Beauty and the Beast too. And I think there are some cool ideas, like a theme he has a lot is like that art is this kind of like sentient, like almost celestial being that it lives like beyond the artist and something like that. So I thought that was like a cool idea, but this one he doesn't fully explore it as much as he does in the other movies.
Yeah,
I don't think, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because it's sort of like the study. It's like the first go of it, and this was like kind of the heyday of like surrealist film in France. Like you have things like Louis Buñuel's like Un Chemin de Loup or something like that, which is like just nonsense, or like was it L'Age d'Or or something like that, where it's just imagery and it's just situations, and none of it needs to make sense because it's surrealism. It's just from your dream, and you're just doing it and exploring the images that drive you, and that's what Blood of the Poet is. But I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. Like, so one thing that hit me immediately with the Cocteau stuff is how much this probably influenced David Lynch.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Who's been described as America's surrealist, and there's like even with like the most recent episodes, like the transposed mouth on the hand and stuff like that, and like shadowy mouth figures and stuff like that. I'm like, Jesus, this is just straight out of like the current episodes. Like it's like right on my. It's like I've been watching this stuff, and it's like a week's difference of like seeing that and then watching this, and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty obvious. Like that's there. And I looked on like Google searching it, and I was looking, a few other people have like picked up on it. But then you also discover how little people are like visually educated. Like they'll be like, yeah, the artwork's even the same, and I'm like, no, the actual like Cocteau's like his line work is contour drawings, and it's like it's a consistent thing. Like his chalkboard drawings and the way he draws sketches and stuff like that, they all look the same, and it's just the way of like when he looks at something, he draws what he sees. David Lynch does not draw like that. He just draws what he sees in his head and just doodles out nonsense.
Right.
And whatnot. Anyway, so I don't know. There's like these moments in Blood of the Poet that I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. But at the same time, I have no desire ever to watch this again.
Right.
And I don't know, like, if it's just like at one point, like if I was like in high school or like right out of high school watching this for the first time, I would have probably just absolutely loved it. I felt like I was a lot more receptive to like surrealism, but nowadays I'm kind of like, nah, but you have to draw me in still. Like if you're making a movie, like I expect a certain amount of like something to make me pay attention to what you're saying. And this, well, spoilers, all three of these films kind of failed to do that, or at least sustain my interest. But yeah, I don't know. There's like the neat thing with Blood of the Poet is like the scenes of like this main character looking through the doors and like looking at the scenes inside. I think that's a really neat idea. That could be better explored, I guess, than here, which I don't think he had any interest in doing that per se. He was just depicting sort of an underworld with like no budget and just using visual gimmicks and like trying out different stuff that's like really effective. And you're like, wow, I still haven't seen anything quite like that. And he kept doing that for the next 20 odd years till he dies in 1960, I guess. So I don't know. That's about all I have to say about Blood of the Poet. Yep.
No, yeah, me too.
Yep. So almost 20 years later, he makes Orpheus. Synopsis of that: at the Café du Poète in Paris, a fight breaks out between the poet Orpheus, played by Jean Marais, who we all remember as the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, and a group of resentful upstarts. Rival poet Segeste is killed, and a mysterious princess insists on taking Orpheus and the body away in her Rolls Royce. Orpheus soon finds himself in the underworld, where the princess announces that she is in fact Death. Orpheus escapes in the car back to the land of the living, only to become obsessed with the car radio. That's like the first third of the movie, basically.
Right.
A lot of that. So I think I would say this is the best of the three movies. Because it feels the most like a movie. Like there's characters. There's there's a purpose to everything kind of happening. Whereas like Blood of the Poet very much was like a short film of just like a bunch of like visual experiments and like very much like an art house film. This is also kind of an art house film, but it's like applying those art house aesthetics and decisions to like an actual narrative. Yeah. So, and the difference here too is I checked when I checked what time it was an hour and 20 minutes, I think, in. So I mean that's a thumbs up, I guess.
No, that's pretty close to where I checked to. It was over an hour.
Yeah.
So it was nearing the end when I checked out where I was.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, this one I might have enjoyed more because I got to actually watch it on my television with a Blu-ray and not watching it on my laptop, which is always kind of a drag. First note I've got here is this is a movie set in a fictional world where people give a fuck about poetry and like the high stakes of poetry because I don't know, I consider myself a learned man with a liberal arts education, and I have never cared about poetry in my entire life. It's the shits. I don't know. That makes me a Neanderthal, so be it. But so this movie,
music is poetry.
No, it's music.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
It's music. Anywho, so it's funny, like this idea. There's like this like entire like cafe dedicated to poets and people standing around. It's
Cafe
like,
de Poet.
Yeah. What a weird world. What a fictional place that this all is. And like Jean Marais, like this like country's like super famous poet who's like everyone hates because he's so good and he's good looking. And then like riots break out and police show up to smash poet heads. That was good. And then that guy gets run down. And then like they pick him up and there's like no safety at all about holding that guy's neck properly. They're just like hauling him around, and it's just like holy shit. This is why so many people died in 1950. It's like fuck, you just break your neck because no one knows how to pick you up properly. So I thought that was good. They just throw him into the back of a car.
Yeah.
Then we get our first taste of the underworld. We get the whole arc. This movie has like definitely more of the Orpheus sort of story going for it. So because I guess we should mention that, like, you know, a few months ago we watched Black Orpheus, which is another iteration of the story done set in a like contemporary time in a foreign land to us. And then here we have this like whole opening spiel about how Orpheus is set in no particular time. It could be set anytime, but even though it is like very definitely like 1950s France, just with some like fantastical elements that just are a part of the story. Like, you know, people don't actually travel through mirrors wearing gloves unless there's someone's not been telling me everything about this world.
Yeah, I think you're missing out on something, man.
Yeah, travel through mirrors. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking about that, and I was kind of surprised at how like just good Black Orpheus really is in comparison to even these adaptations. Even this one, which I would say is like the best of the lot, but still like not like an awesome movie by any means.
Yeah.
But I'd say that there's like better characters. There's good situations. Like there's actual conversations occurring. So there's something kind of to like focus on. And I'm trying to think. You can interject at any time. Like most of my notes are just about like sort of the film tricks that are used that I think are really neat. Like I think like once again, mirrors. There's like tons of mirrors, and we've talked about how much you are a big mirror fan.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah, and I think the biggest neat thing in this one is the rear projection.
Yes.
Using the scene when Morpheus first goes into the underworld with the chauffeur, and like the chauffeur's in the foreground walking in front of a rear projection, and it's just like, but even though the characters are in the same place technically, but they're just shot in a separate space, and it just gives this really otherworldly feel of like things being out of place, and they're having a conversation even though one of them is a rear projection, and the one and the character in the front has like wind blowing through his hair, and it's just like it's great scene. Like I'm not sure where they shot that stuff, but like it's like this like, you know, European ruin that like always like looks amazing. We have nothing like that at all in like Western Canada. Nothing resembles this, so it's always like great to see. You know, I guess like this is also post-war Europe once again. We've talked about that many times on the show at this point. And it just gives it this real weight of place, even though it's like a fantastical movie done with like film tricks and like stages and stuff like that. A movie about an artist that has to like go save his wife from a jealous death, but it all like is still shot like on locations, and everything feels like it's really in a like a real place rather than fake movie land.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I all the technique stuff that you were talking about, I dig all that stuff a lot too. I actually thought this movie was pretty good. I really because I really like the technique and the effects, and I thought the story was good too. I think it hits a few walls at points where you're just like, you're like, all right, come on, move it along here a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's not like a perfect movie or anything like that, but I did like watching it. I might watch it again someday.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. I also thought the plot and the story were actually pretty good. It reminded me a lot of, I bet this is like Neil Gaiman's favorite movie because this is very Neil Gaiman-y, where it's like that fantasy romance type of story.
Well, but, he doesn't. He has his the Orpheus character.
I was gonna say obviously in Sandman he has Orpheus and Eurydice and all that jazz. But I was thinking that the whole time. I was like, man, this is so Neil Gaiman-y. This has got to be his favorite shit. But I like some of the ideas that they bring up to the Death Stalkers and that kind of death is like a business, things like that. I was like, that's kind of neat. I like that. And I think it does have it's got a couple cool lines about sleeping and dreams and things going backwards in time and forward and what things mean. So it's not short of weighty ideas.
Yeah. Sometimes
they'll say a line and you'll be like, where it's like the bird is a clock, but the fingers are the man, and you're just like, I don't care. when he when they do the poetry stuff, you're like, sure, whatever. But there were a few things on the dreams and sleeping that I really liked what they were talking about. There was one line I thought was really funny when the guy was like, your wife is dying. And he was like, oh, that's just a trick to get me back in the house.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys still do that to this day. I thought that was really fun. But no, yeah, I actually like this movie. I thought it was really good. The technical aspects and the effects are wicked. Mm-hmm. When he's being led into the dream world, like you said, and the guide is blowing in the wind, but he's not. And then when it changes and they're it's the Inception type stuff again, and they fall. I thought that was all super cool. I don't buy that he falls in love with death. At that point, I know it's it means something else, but at the same time, I was like, I don't really buy that. So I think there's a few things that you kind of have to you're like, all right, okay, whatever. I think there's more good than there's bad.
Right.
I did really like it, but I don't know. There's enough stuff too that you're just like, what? You're like, that doesn't need to be in here. And it's only, this movie's what, an hour and a half?
Yep.
So yeah, it's only an hour and a half, but at the same time, it probably could have been shortened a little. Well, I don't know if it could have been shortened. I just wasn't interested in some of the other.
There's something that happens, I think, in that last act where you're like, oh, it's still going, is it? Because it hits the restart on everything too. There's the stuff that's always effective in his stuff is that the play of just having a person fall, but then he intends on playing the footage backwards, so it has this weird otherworldly effect of that isn't how people would stand up out of bed, but it looks so great. And he's done it so many. He did it in Beauty and the Beast a couple times, and he's doing it here, and it's just I don't know, it always works. It's so he really loved that effect. I think he was very proud he came up with it, and he's like, yeah, it's so basic. No one's got the balls to do it the way I'm doing it.
Exactly.
I got some interpretation quotes here from Wikipedia from old Jean Cocteau himself. In addition to Cocteau's remarks quoted above, he writes further in The Art of Cinema, which was published in 1992, I guess. The three basic themes of Orpheus are the successive deaths through which a poet must pass before he becomes, in that admirable line from Mallarme, blah, 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 changed into himself at last by eternity, whatever that means. The theme of immortality. The person who represents Orpheus's death sacrifices herself and abolishes herself to make the poet immortal. Mirrors. We watch ourselves grow old in mirrors. They bring us closer to death.
I agree with that.
Yeah. That one makes that's plain speak right there.
Plain speak for plain folk like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No. That's what I mean. In all three of these two, you can tell that Jean Cocteau, I like his ideas, and I think he's a smart guy, and he has these very grand, fantastical ways that he looks at things, and I think that's all really cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes he shows it really well, and then sometimes you're kind of like, whatever, man. Poetry is not that cool. Nobody thinks so. So,
especially in 2017.
Yeah, exactly.
People are just making their chap books with lots of vanity press propped up by people in their poetry.
I hate that.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about poetry. The third one of these movies, Testament of Orpheus from 1959. The Judgment of the Young Poet by Hurtubise and the Princess, the Gypsies, the Palace of Pallas Athena, the spear of the goddess which pierces the poet's heart, the temptation of the Sphinx, the flight of Oedipus, and the final Assumption.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's from Letterboxd.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's sure a description of something.
Yep. So, Testament of Orpheus, it started out with some real potential, RJ. It started off like I thought it started off very strong. There's this gimmick with Jean Cocteau playing himself playing the lead character.
Right.
He's traveling through time, and he's setting up the story, visiting figures.
Yes.
And
continue.
He's like, I don't know, he's like narrating his like appearances to people, including one where he startles a woman where she drops a baby on his head. Which is classic. It's like, I think that's like, so I think there's like a bit where like, okay, the neck thing is one thing in the other movie, but dropping that baby fucking right on its head, which actually pays off because it's like, oh, this guy is like pretty normal, but he was dropped on his head, so there's some things he can't do anymore, and it's like, well, holy shit, that's weird. What a weird thing to have in your movie. This movie is definitely I would refer to it as a raw guts production, where there's like there's no attempt to disguise that this is a movie, that this is like very like as it is. Like you can see the setting, you can see the backdrops. This is the last movie that Cocteau made. He like died like just like months later. So this is like the movie that's probably closest in some ways to like the themes that he's been getting at about like kind of replacing this artist and like love being destruction with death. And like coming to terms with that. Yes, I don't know. We get like less of the like visual gimmickry, but we get more David Lynchy stuff. We get like characters talking backwards, and you get the like red lodge or whatever you call it, black lodge speaking mannerisms, which I don't know. That's like this is like got to be one of the earliest scenes I've seen of characters talking backwards through like prolonged speeches with subtitles underneath them speaking backwards, and so it's played forwards. Like I can't think of like anything else, but I mean I'm not going to stand by that. I like, who knows, there could be something I just haven't seen. Yeah, Ghost Dad from the 90s,
1993.
Yeah,
or something.
Well, as shown in Testament of Orpheus, it's possible to travel back in time.
Exactly.
I don't know. Again, this movie started off like, ooh, this could be good. This might be my favorite of the batch.
Yeah.
And then, holy fuck, there's the goddamn tribunal scene. That is like a half hour long. In shot in like the most boring back and forth kind of like chatty, shitty, boring way possible. I was like, I fast forwarded, dude. I've got to admit.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Is this the first time you've ever had to do that for Criterion?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
RJ.
Is this at the bottom of the pile for you?
Okay, honestly, no, it's not at the bottom of the pile. But I was just like, I wanted to go back and watch my Nazis documentaries and finish them before today, and I was like, I don't care. There's like, I don't give a fuck.
I understand.
Yeah.
So I'll just chime in a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't like this.
Yeah.
Either. It's definitely like without a doubt the weakest of all of them. It's a little bit not disappointing because it's like, who cares? But like what you're saying, it's like it's too bad because it had a lot of potential. And then coming off of Orpheus, which was like the best one, you're like, oh man, I hope the next one's good too.
Because this one is like a sequel. Like it is.
It's
like a meta sequel.
Yeah. And so like those ideas are cool and stuff like that. It's just none of it ever really. I don't think any of it like works that well. Like the idea of like, because there are other things I've seen where there's like guys who like get taken into their own things. Like doesn't Grant Morrison do that all the fucking time where he like pops up in his own comic books like Animal Man?
It's happened a couple times, I
Yeah.
guess.
So like people do stuff like that, and like sometimes I'm on board with it, and sometimes I'm not. And there's nothing like really bad about this, but it's borderline like boring.
Yeah,
And
it's boring. It's boring.
Irrelevant, where it's just like
Yeah.
it's just like a vehicle for him to like get more of his ideas and like sayings out there, like his poetry. But he did it so much better in the other two movies that it's just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like,
whatever.
I mean, and there's like these things in it. Like there's visuals that are like striking in themselves, but as like, again, I don't know, maybe it's just like my taste is like hardened, and like I kind of expect a certain amount of drama to draw me into like things. And I mean, it's a pretty good way of like all of my favorite, I mean, this is kind of like a self-fulfilling thing, but like all of my favorite movies kind of like follow this sort of structure. But I think it's like most people feel the same way, because it's not like I've got like particularly like complex or different tastes from a lot of people. Like usually it's like, oh, this movie's really good for like all pretty obvious reasons. It should draw you in, unless there's just something wrong with you. Whereas this, like, I just don't know. One thing that's interesting with this too is like it's got like a quarter of the total views of like any of the other two movies on Letterboxd.
Oh wow.
So like not very many people have watched Testament of Orpheus, and I wonder, it's like the people who buy the box set, they like watch the one that's like 50 minutes, and then they watch Orpheus, and they go, yeah, one of these days I'll get around to watching Testament of Orpheus, and they just don't. But it's also like the most highly rated too. Like
maybe that's just because not a lot of people have seen it.
Maybe, but there's a lot of like 4-star like fucking people who love this. So I don't know. Again, this like comes back to like, I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to make excuses for this movie, like, because I don't think it's like, it's not a terrible movie. I think it's just boring in like a way that like a lot, like some of these Criterions have like kind of been oh yeah, that's just, this exists and isn't like interesting. I would never talk about it. But like maybe like when we're watching like like a trilogy, like and we're kind of like we're made to watch all three movies in one go. That is also maybe like not the ideal way to be watching these movies. Like, because I'm sure that like when he made these, I doubt he was like, yeah, you know, this is going to be my trilogy. It's not like Lord of the Rings, right? It's like this. It's like a thematic trilogy of like, oh, I was really obsessed with the idea of Orpheus, and I made 3 films about it, and there's like decades in between them, and I just decided to do different things. Like this one is like the closest thing you would call to a sequel, but that's like super misleading because it's just like it's not a sequel in any way. It's not like what happens next in the story. It's like, no, here's a new interpretation with like similar characters, because things are always happening over and over again, and it doesn't matter if you've seen the previous one, even though it opens up with like a cold open to the previous movie. It's very peculiar. And there's like no real like attention to like the film craft, in the sense that it's trying to seduce you into like the drama of these stories. Like it's very much like it's more in line with like the French New Wave, like sort of like thesis as film approach. Which, I mean, like, I don't know, maybe that was more interesting in like 1959 and for that audience at the time, but I don't know how it plays right now. Like maybe if I was like embroiled in film school and I had to write a paper, this stuff would be probably way more interesting to write about than it is to watch. So it's kind of like, it feels very academic, not like a super enjoyable movie. And I'm not above enjoying movies that are like more academic than enjoyable, but I don't know, man. This bummed me out. I checked my
me too.
I checked my first time code on this was 33 minutes, and
mine was 20 minutes.
Yeah. Mine was about 33, and then I kept checking the time, and then I fast forwarded. So yeah, and then because I was just like, I knew I wasn't going to get anything out of like the rest of it. Like I just was like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to watch it. It'll be like I could be watching a wall. Like it just isn't going to hit me.
Yeah, it sucks because I think the first one like I liked it. I'm not gonna watch it again, but I feel like someone out there is gonna love that fucking shit.
Yeah.
So people should watch that one like at least once because it's not that long.
Yeah.
Orpheus is good. I liked Orpheus. I think people should watch it, even though it has a few dull points. And then I don't know. Testament's not very good. It's just not. It doesn't do it.
It doesn't, yeah, but like, I don't know, did you feel the same way that I did about like it started off well? Like it seemed like potentially.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that's why it's a bummer because like you're like, oh, cool. You're like, this is such a. It's like what a cool way to like frame his movie where he's now placed himself into this set of movies that are all about like traveling through worlds and like poetry. Yeah. And all that stuff, but then it just gets really boring, and you're like, all right, man, you're cool, but I don't need to watch your old ass just fucking walking around for 2 hours. Because it's not even 2 hours; it's less than an hour and a half. It feels
it's like 80 minutes. It's like the middle of their pack.
It feels like 2 hours because he's just walking around so much, and you're like, oh, come on, dude.
Yeah.
So, yeah, bummer.
Yeah, on the whole, I guess like I was like probably disappointed.
Yep, me too.
By all these bad boys. Yeah, again, like there was like I guess to talk about some stuff I did like. The David Lynch references crept up here again. Like I said, the backwards talking stuff. Painted eyelids. And then I don't know. That's about it, man.
No, yeah, I thought the second one was actually good. I like that one, and I think the first one has elements that are pretty good. So I think that one's worth watching too. It's not great, but the third one, whatever. You could get by without.
Right.
Yep.
Well, who hates these movies, RJ?
Probably a few people.
Yeah. Ross Boname gave I got one for each. Okay.
Nice.
For Blood of the Poet, 1.5 stars, and they label it Criterion number 67. I've usually found that I enjoy surrealist films, as I really like films that are off, and I especially like Louis Buñuel's Un Chien Andalou, which was made before The Blood of a Poet. But man, I could not get into this one. Some of the visual techniques were fantastic, such as the man jumping into the mirror or the hallway that he can't stand straight in. But I never felt like the images I was being shown were adding up to anything more than just technique, which is a shame because I very much enjoyed Jean Cocteau's next film, Beauty and the Beast. But this one, I have no shame in saying I just did not get at all. And that's like one of the lowest reviews on it. And I don't know. Yeah. Okay. John M. for Orpheus, he gave that 2.5 stars. I figure I owe this a review, although unfortunately I don't have the time to be as fleshed out with it as I would like to be. On paper, I should love this, and I should love Cocteau. I have no problem with the mixture of fantasy and reality, as my love for Where Ashenthal and Angelopoulos, among others, should indicate. I don't know what that it means.
Okay.
Anyway, butchering that language, and yet, for what it's worth, I find his films utterly unremarkable. Here, there are a handful of neat camera tricks which, to some, may stand out as nice artistic flourishes, and yet, not only are they few and far between, but they are so utterly unremarkable in their execution, and are used as nothing more but narrative embellishments. His films do nothing challenging in form, but what's arguably worse is that their fantastical elements are hardly more impressive than those in Malaise, and frankly, I strongly prefer Malaise. I stand by my complaint that Blood of a Poet fails in comparison to the other modernist French films in what it seeks to accomplish. However, Blood of a Poet is infinitely more impressive formally than this, which rests on such a wooden, passionless narrative. Why Cocteau is lumped in with other avant-garde names, I'll never know. I'm glad there are some who get something out of his work, but it does nothing, or does next to nothing for me.
Well,
doesn't really talk about this movie at all.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, well, it's not like, whatever, but it's like, whatever.
Yeah. But like,
whatever.
Whatever, man. Do you know this is on Ebert's great movies list?
Which one? Testament?
Yeah. No, Orpheus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Ebert likes shit like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, sometimes it's random.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, like there's the shots that are really nice, like of Moraes just standing in front of like the mirror and like pantomiming on the mirror and stuff like that. It's really
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, here's a good one though too, also for Orpheus from Man Bite Zombie. 1.5 star. Occasionally, an interesting shot or effect breaks through the monotony. That is what feels like an adaptation of a bad B-grade sci-fi movie. But hey, I seem to have an irrational prejudice against most French films I've ever seen.
That sounds like a personal problem.
Man Bite Zombies top 4 are Shaun of the Dead, Why Don't You Play in Hell, Gravity, and In Bruges.
Gravity?
Yeah.
The fuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Who gives a fuck about that movie now?
Whatever.
And the review here for Testament of Orpheus, Kyle Garvey, the lowest review, 2 stars. Cocteau's finale. I have a very bad memory for the future. Oh, we didn't even talk about this. That horse costume is not fooling anyone. I knew it was a person and not a horse after, like 10 seconds of careful scrutiny. I didn't like that man horse. You're taking the words out of my mouth. Wild Strawberries, like, I guess, in authorship, mortality, etc. Yeah, I even wrote a note about that horseman. So there's two horsemen.
There's a couple.
Yeah, there's 2 in this. The first one is when Cocteau, as his character, is like walking down the hill, and he crosses paths with a man in a black leotard and a giant horse head. That's like quite like, what the fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even mention it, but I only had 2 notes on this movie, and one of them was guy who is llama? Question mark. Because I could tell it was horses, but at certain times I was like, what is that supposed to be? Like a fucking llama or something? Like, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird, man.
Yeah, and then there's like the 2-man horse duo. No.
That's the one I thought was a llama. When the 2 form the one horse.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is this? But they come up again later at the end of the movie too. Like, it's weird.
Yeah. And then there's stuff that happens. It seemed
there's stuff that happens
as I skimmed the final act of this movie. Anyway, I don't know. On the whole, I would say I'm pretty disappointed. I guess I had high hopes.
Yeah.
And I guess it's like, this is what I get for coming to this stuff so late. Maybe I would have liked more, but maybe I'd rewatch it now and be like, oh, that's not as good as I remember it being. But who knows? Also with Testament of Orpheus, like, I think of the people I follow, it's like you, me, and one other person that have ever watched it. So I'm expecting more from listeners who are going to, I guess, jump in on it, and we'll see if they feel the same way.
We'll see, all right.
We shall see. I don't know. It'd be cool if people were more into it. There are people who are really into, particularly Testament of Orpheus, and think it's like one of the best Cocteaus they've seen. So I don't know.
No, not by us, but maybe someone else will really dig it. Whatever. That's their prerogative.
Anyway, I think that's it. Unless you got any final words.
Nope.
Okay then. After the break, we're gonna go break through mirrors, break on through to the other side.
You should have said that.
Yeah.
We could go form a llama.
A man
with
llama?
A horse head. Yeah, there's 2 of us.
Yeah, well, you got a hotel room and everything.
Yeah, get your back page, whatever that thing was.
I know what you'll be doing. What's this back page Jarrett's talking about?
Yeah, give me 10 minutes.
Yeah.